Caleb Maupin is my favorite American broadcaster. He's my colleague on RT America. He's a speaker, he's a writer, and he's a political analyst. And he joins me now. I don't know if it's on Skype. It is. Caleb, welcome again to the show. I'd like to wish you a Happy New Year, but it would seem rather incongruous in the circumstances. I saw pictures of anti-war activity all over the United States, very big demonstrations, very quick off the mark. How would you calibrate the state of public opinion on this whole crisis right now in the U.S.?
Well, there has been widespread denunciation of Trump's move to kill Qasem Soleimani, even from some of the most mainstream foreign policy voices in the United States. We recently saw the director of the Atlantic Council, certainly not an anti-imperialist organization, but we saw the director of the Atlantic Council speaking very, very harshly and arguing that this is going to hurt the influence of the United States in the Middle East in the long run. What's quite interesting and important to point out here is the way I see it, there is a long-standing division in U.S. politics between the military-industrial complex and the manufacturers and the CIA, intelligence, soft power apparatus, and big oil companies. And what has been very, very clear, if you listen to voices of that kind of big oil Eastern establishment in the United States that favors soft power, is that when Trump killed Qasem Soleimani, he basically ended any soft power opportunities for the United States in the Middle East, right? No one is going to trust the United States any longer. We remember the nuclear deal, and all over the world, people are looking at this and saying this is a result of the fact that Iran negotiated with the United States, made huge concessions to the United States at the negotiating table, and then was stabbed in the back, right? And that the credibility of the United States as a negotiator, as a soft power entity is over. It's very similar to the fallout, what happened in Libya, where Gaddafi had negotiated with the United States, and look how that ended up. And now Iran, that made huge concessions, has been completely stabbed in the back. This ruins the credibility of the United States in the region. Many mainstream voices in U.S. politics feel like this has gone too far.
Now, the Liberals have flip-flopped around in recent years, so-called progressives, even some leftists, who've been denouncing Trump for not making war enough, particularly in Syria, but also in relation to Russia and the Ukraine and so on. They seem to have flopped again. The Liberati are out in full voice denouncing Trump for this action. How do we analyze that?
Well, there are different factions within America's economic ruling class. Trump is very closely aligned with certain interests. If you look at who's funding PragerU, which is one of the big YouTube channels that promotes Trump's ideas, if you look at who's funding Turning Points USA, which is a group promoting Donald Trump on college campuses, you'll see Bernie Marcus, who's the owner of Home Depot, which is a hardware store chain that's been putting small hardware stores across the United States out of business. If you go to any Home Depot, all the products on the shelves come from military contracting corporations. Who else is funding Trump activism in the United States? You've got Betsy DeVos and the DeVos Foundation. And Betsy DeVos, her brother is Eric Prince of Blackwater, the military contracting corporation. You've got Sheldon Adelson, who is a big supporter of the Likud party. And between all of these entities, and let me add the fracking companies that are having trouble paying back their loans, between all of them, they favor an escalation with Iran to shoot the oil prices up, to help Netanyahu, who's in trouble in Israel, and to make money for weapons manufacturers. Whereas the big oil establishment in the United States favored a different strategy. Under Obama, we saw a strategic oil price drop. We saw soft power negotiations. We saw kind of a building up of the reformist movement and elements in Iran that were more favorable to negotiations with the United States. It's a difference in strategy. That's essentially the difference here. The military-industrial complex likes to blow things up and have big wars and make lots of money. And the big oil apparatus favors a long-term strategy that's more managerial, pushing soft power and maneuvering to bring down geopolitical rivals of the United States. And when Trump carried out this move, he essentially ruined any hope of a soft power strategy against Iran. The richest of the rich in the United States see this as completely blowing to bits their strategy of gradually bringing down and fomenting unrest in Iran, maybe having a color revolution. They see that as completely over here. This is a battle of strategies, and the military-industrial complex, the Likud party in Israel, the fracking companies that want that oil price up as high as they possibly can, they seem to have won out here when Donald Trump took this move. Saudi Arabia is a big winner here too, right? Saudi Arabia at this point is seeing Trump take out, the leader of one of their biggest rivals. Al-Qaeda and ISIS forces that tried to kill Soleimani on so many occasions failed to do it, but now we've got the White House doing what Al-Qaeda and ISIS couldn't do. It's quite a dramatic moment here. But many of the supporters of Donald Trump, from the rank and file of some of the new right-wing movements that have emerged in the United States, aren't exactly thrilled with this. Sure, you have a flood of people who never even heard of Qasem Soleimani, who know nothing about this on Twitter, hearing that Trump killed some terrorist, and they're cheering, and all of that. But a lot of the more ideological folks within the Trump camp are very furious because they see this as a complete repudiation of what they voted for Trump for. Trump said America first. He ran on a platform of isolationism, and he seems to be on the brink of getting us into a whole new big war with a country that's much bigger than Iraq, much bigger than Libya, much stronger than Afghanistan. The implications of this are big.
Now, how does this affect, and how is it affected by the impeachment game of the Democrats in the House and now presumably one day in the Senate?
Well, the thing is, the impeachment forced Trump into a situation where he was extremely dependent on the support of the neoconservative wing of his own party. The Republican senators, most of which do not share Donald Trump's America First outlook, but rather have a neoconservative John Bolton, view of the world. Those folks are who Donald Trump is essentially groveling before and begging. If they have his back at an impeachment trial, he's fine. However, if he doesn't please them, if somehow some new information emerges or they just suddenly have a change of heart in the coming months, Trump will be out of office. So you can really interpret this move as Donald Trump kind of quaking in fear and trying to make sure he's got the Saudis on his side, trying to make sure he's got Likud in Israel on his side, and trying to make sure he's got the neocon wing of his own party that was not happy when he fired John Bolton, trying to line up their support as he faces an impeachment. You can interpret it very much that way. This is not a bold, heroic move, as some of Trump's supporters have liked to portray it. This is really Trump backing and kind of cowering in fear and desperately trying to hold on to the support of the neocons.
Now, in the Democratic camp, how will this all play out? As I saw it, only Bernie Sanders unequivocally denounced the Trump action. The others, flanneled about a bit on the one hand, but on the other. But Sanders was quite forthright, wasn't he?
Indeed, Sanders was very, very critical, and we have heard denunciations of the move from a lot of mainstream Democrats. However, they always, beforehand say, well, and they repeat all the allegations against Qasem Soleimani in U.S. media now, claiming that somehow he's responsible for the deaths of U.S. soldiers in Iraq when the IEDs were largely planted by Sunnis and extremists.
They never explain that. Every time I see that on Twitter, I say, what were these crimes, please? And nobody has ever responded.
Indeed, it's just taken as fact. Democrats, Republicans just repeat these allegations about Qasem Soleimani, someone who heroically battled ISIS, had a huge record of defending Christians in Syria, defending Christians in Iraq, defending religious minorities, fighting against the ISIL Wahhabi extremist element. Somehow they're trying to paint him as if he's another bin Laden. But the reality is that's simply not the case. What is interesting also is that, in this age in the United States where, on our university campuses, young people are being taught that there is no truth, that right and wrong are all just kind of a matter of opinion, that this age of pessimism where people are basically being told to not be optimistic about the future. If you look at the life of Qasem Soleimani, and I'm not going to endorse everything he ever said or did, but if you look at his life, he very much incarnates a lot of the values that Americans are longing for: honor, sacrifice, martyrdom, martial virtue, these kind of values that are missing in U.S. society as we enter this age of postmodernism. It's quite interesting that to see that now they are trying to rewrite history and make him into the kind of people he fought against. Let's remember this. Qasem Soleimani saved the lives of thousands of Christians in Syria. He saved the lives of thousands of Christians in Iraq. I mean, he was very much, a champion for people that were downtrodden and oppressed. He also, apparently, from what I understand, at different points was willing to sit down with the United States and cooperate with them in places like Afghanistan, in Iraq, immediately after the U.S. invasion. So they're just completely rewriting the record here and giving Saudi Arabia, a country that is the homeland of Osama bin Laden, where the bin Laden family is one of the richest, has a state monopoly on construction, basically giving them a blank pass, overlooking the 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report, and then trying to rewrite all the history of the Middle East to make Qasem Soleimani and the Islamic Republic of Iran responsible for the crimes of the people that they have fought against.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some breaking news, Caleb. In the last few minutes, Donald Trump has said the U.S. could act disproportionately if Iran targets any American person or target in revenge for the killing of Soleimani. The U.S. president tweeted, of course, after Tehran vowed to avenge the death of the general. Trump wrote, "These media posts will serve as notification to the United States Congress that should Iran strike any U.S. person or target, the U.S. will quickly and fully strike back, and perhaps in a disproportionate manner. Such legal notice is not required, but is given nevertheless." What do you think he means by that, Caleb?
Well, this sounds like another cowardly statement from a man who realizes that when Iran responds, which they most likely will, there will be thousands of people, not just all over the world, but there will be millions of people in the United States who won't blame Iran for it, but will blame Trump for, does he really expect that he can kill the top general, the hero of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and not get a response? And there are going to be many people who, whatever response Iran gives, won't just say, oh, Iran is evil, but will actually blame Donald Trump for escalating the situation completely unnecessarily and putting American lives in danger. And I think he realizes that, and he's trying to hold off, trying to stop the tidal wave or the avalanche that he himself started. This is the sorcerer's apprentice, losing control of his own creation.
Well, I think that's a good point to end it. Brilliant words. Thank you very much, Caleb Maupin, writer, analyst, speaker, very good speaker too, and my colleague at RT America. I'm on RT America every day, by the way, Monday to Friday at 5 o'clock London time with Manila Chan on the In Question